Have you ever stumbled across a case that truly doesn't make any sense or doesn't have any explanation? Well, today we're looking at 5 such cases like these. Some you may have heard of, but some you may not have. All of these cases are unsolved and have left investigators stumped as they failed to uncover the truth behind the mystery. Without further ado, let's get into these unexplained cases together. The death of Elisa Lam. In 2013, a 21-year-old student named Elisa Lam was on a solo trip to California, and after 2 days of arriving in Los Angeles, Lam checked into the Cecil Hotel, an infamous spot known for its dark past of suicides, murders, and criminals who had stayed there. But just 2 days into her stay, the young student disappeared. Lam was scheduled to check out of the hotel on the 31st of January, but after her parents hadn't heard from her, they called the Los Angeles Police Department. There were no immediate signs of what happened and no clear indication of where she'd gone, just a sudden absence. Nearly 3 weeks later, something more unsettling emerged. The security footage from inside the hotel lift, the day she was meant to check out, shows Lam acting extremely strange. In the video, Lam appears to be alone and presses multiple buttons and steps in and out of the lift repeatedly, and at times it looks like she's hiding from someone, but in other moments she gestures as if she's speaking to someone in the hallway. So was she being followed? Was someone else out in the hallway just out of view? Or was something else happening entirely? A few days later, hotel guests began to complain about the water. There were reports of low pressure, a strange taste, and odd colour. And upon investigation, the maintenance staff found the body of Elisa Lam inside one of the water tanks on the roof. Horror aside, the circumstances of how her body was found didn't make any sense. While it's possible that Lam suffered a mental breakdown as she had a history of mental illness, this doesn't change the fact that the roof was extremely difficult for guests to access, and the tanks themselves were hard to open from the outside and even harder to close from within. The official ruling would point towards accidental drowning, with mental health factors playing a role. But for many people, that explanation didn't fully resolve the unease surrounding the case, because when you look at the details, it feels like something is missing. And that's what makes the death of Elisa Lam so difficult to explain. It's the feeling that the answers that we do have don't fully explain what we saw. And if you do want to learn more about this case, I have made a whole video on this, which will be linked above, but let's move on to the next one. D.B. Cooper. In November 1971, a man using the name Dan Cooper boarded a flight from Portland to Seattle. He came across as a calm, well-dressed gentleman who otherwise blended in with the other passengers. That was until the plane was in the air. Mid-flight, Cooper handed a note to a flight attendant which claimed that he had a bomb, and what followed was one of the most unusual hijackings in aviation history. The man, who would later become known as D.B. Cooper, demanded $200,000 in cash and 4 parachutes. When the plane landed at its intended destination of Seattle, his demands were indeed met. The other passengers were released and the money was delivered. But from here, things only escalated, quite literally. Cooper instructed the pilots to take off again, this time heading towards Mexico. But somewhere over the dark, forest-dense landscape of the Pacific Northwest, he opened the rear stairway of the plane and jumped into the night with the money. And this was the last time he was ever seen. Despite one of the largest manhunts in FBI history, no confirmed trace of him was ever found. And to this day, no body, no parachute, and no clear identity of the man has been found. And years later, a small portion of the ransom money was discovered buried along the banks of the Columbia River, but this only deepened the mystery further, because it didn't explain whether he survived the jump at all. Some theories claim he was an experienced parachutist who planned every single detail of the crime. Some argue that he died in impact out there in the wilderness. And some even suggest that he started a new life under a different name. So, did he escape or did he disappear? The disappearance of Madeleine McCann. In May 2007, 3-year-old Madeleine McCann disappeared from a holiday apartment in Praia da Luz, Portugal. She had been vacationing there with her parents and siblings when one evening everything changed. The parents were dining at a nearby restaurant and were checking in on their children throughout the night, and during one of these checks, Madeleine's bed was found completely empty. There were no signs of forced entry and no real leads to follow. However, one witness did claim that they saw a man carrying a young child away from the apartments that night, and a sketch was drawn from their description. From the day of her disappearance, what followed was one of the most widely reported missing person cases in the world, with multiple countries latching onto the sensational aspects of the story. Despite this coverage though, and after many years of identifying and questioning suspects, the case is still entirely open. There's still no answer to what really happened that night, and no confirmation of where Madeleine is. Many people speculate about the parents being involved, but others say someone else must be blamed for her disappearance. But where are all the answers, and will we ever see an end to this case? Let me know what you think. And I also have done a video on this, so please do go and watch that if you are interested. Dyatlov Pass Incident. In February 1959, a group of experienced hikers set out on an expedition into the Ural Mountains in the Soviet Union. The group was led by Igor Dyatlov and included young, well-prepared individuals for the conditions ahead. It was therefore a complete shock when the hikers failed to return and a search party was sent out to find them. And what this search party discovered was difficult to explain. Their tent was found first, but it wasn't as it should have been. It had been cut open from the inside, as if the group had made a sudden decision to escape as quickly as possible. Outside, footprints led away from the tent, some barefoot, some in socks, but all were heading into the freezing wilderness. And as the search continued, the bodies of the hikers were discovered over a wide expanse. Some appeared to have died from hypothermia, but others had injuries that raised questions. Crushed ribs and severe head trauma were injuries that, according to the investigators at the time, resembled the force of a car crash, but without the external wounds you might expect. One hiker was missing her tongue and eyes, and another just his eyes. And there were also reports of radiation on some clothing, as well as an unexplained orange tint to the skin of some of the victims. The official conclusion stated that the group had died due to an unknown compelling force, and for decades, understandably, this did little to satisfy the questions surrounding the case. More recently, investigations have suggested that an avalanche could explain the group's sudden exit from the tent. But even that doesn't fully account for the injuries or the distance between the bodies. And that, among many other factors, is what makes the Dyatlov Pass incident so enduring. It's not just one mystery, it's several layered on top of each other. What are your thoughts on this strange occurrence? The Flannan Isles lighthouse disappearance. In December 1900, a lighthouse off a remote group of islands off the coast of Scotland stopped responding. The light, which was meant to guide ships safely through dangerous waters, had gone dark. At first, it didn't seem like a major concern. When a passing vessel noticed the lighthouse wasn't operating, the alarm was understandably raised. A relief ship was eventually sent to investigate, and as soon as it arrived at the island, something immediately felt wrong. There was no one there to greet them. The lighthouse keepers, 3 men assigned to the station, had vanished. Inside the lighthouse, things appeared almost normal. Meals had been left unfinished, and a chair was overturned. There were no signs of a struggle though, and no indication of what had happened. 2 sets of oilskin coats were missing, suggesting that at least 2 of the men had gone outside, but 1 coat remained, which raised the unsettling question of why the 3rd person would step out into a storm without proper protection. There were signs of severe weather damage outside, and equipment had been displaced and ropes had been torn out from their fixtures. This all suggested that a powerful storm had hit the island, and the official explanation would later align with this and point towards a natural cause. That the men had gone out to secure the equipment during the storm and were swept away by a sudden, powerful wave. But the thing is, all 3 men were experienced lighthouse keepers, and they understood the dangers of the sea. So it seems unlikely that they would all leave the safety of the lighthouse together, especially without putting on the proper clothing. As you can imagine, no bodies were ever recovered, and no definitive sequence of events was ever confirmed. And that's what makes the Flannan Isles lighthouse disappearance so captivating. It's not just the isolating location or the severity of the conditions, It's the absence of explanation. So what do you think happened to those men? And that is it for these mysterious cases that still have no explanation. If you'd like me to do more videos like this, so focusing on a few cases at once, please let me know. And as always, thanks so much for watching, and I will see you guys next time.